For centuries, the Galactic Dominion had ruled space with unmatched power, its warships towering over the battlefield like gods of destruction. Their energy weapons, plasma cannons, and impenetrable shields made them unstoppable. No species had ever challenged their might, not truly. They had crushed rebellions, wiped out entire civilizations, and maintained their rule without fear. Until now. Until humanity. They had been dismissed as a minor race, a backwater civilization barely worth the Dominion's attention. But that changed the moment the UHS Titan entered the battlefield and fired its first shot. The Dominion fleet was massive, stretching across the void in a perfect formation, their flagship leading the charge with an aura of supreme confidence. The Dominion commander, Grand Admiral Xalvok, watched from the bridge, arms crossed, expecting another easy victory. They had fought 100 wars, conquered 1,000 worlds, and no one had ever withstood their firepower. Yet, across the battlefield, the human fleet stood firm, small, outnumbered, fragile-looking compared to the Dominion's behemoth warships. Xalvok almost felt sorry for them. Almost. He gave the order to charge weapons, expecting the usual desperate attempts at resistance, the same energy blasts that his ships would absorb without trouble. He was already planning the victory speech in his head. Then, it happened. A single flash of light erupted from the Titan, but it wasn't the glow of a plasma cannon or the flicker of an ion torpedo. It was something else. A projectile, unseen and undetectable, traveling so fast that no sensors picked it up until it was far too late. It wasn't slowed by shields. It didn't explode in a grand spectacle of fire. Instead, it punched through the Dominion flagship like a blade through paper, carving a perfect, smoking hole straight through its thick hull. The bridge, where Xalvok had once stood in confident arrogance, was instantly obliterated, along with everyone inside. The mighty warship, a vessel that had survived 100 battles, simply drifted lifelessly in the void. Silence fell over the Dominion fleet. For the first time in history, they hesitated. No one had ever done this before. No one had ever bypassed their shields. No one had ever killed a Dominion admiral in a single shot. The officers scrambled to understand what had just happened, but before they could react, another shot came. The second railgun round hit their closest battleship, ripping through its main engine core, causing a chain reaction of explosions. The ship broke apart within seconds, debris scattering in all directions. Then came the third shot. The fourth. Each impact was devastating, and not a single human weapon had been stopped. Panic spread across the Dominion ranks. Their energy weapons were useless against these human warships because by the time they fired, the humans had already moved. The Titan and its fleet were faster, more maneuverable, and their weapons ignored everything the Dominion had ever built. Plasma bolts lit up the darkness, but the humans weaved through them like predators dancing around their prey. Dominion warships that had once crushed entire fleets were now being torn apart, one by one, helpless against this new kind of warfare. For too long, the Dominion had believed that war would always be fought the same way. They had perfected their shields, strengthened their armor, but they had never imagined a weapon that simply didn't care. Railguns were primitive. They had thought crude weapons of the past, outdated technology that had no place in modern warfare. But humans had done something unthinkable. They had refined it, perfected it, turned it into something unstoppable. Each round was a chunk of solid metal, moving so fast that it carried the power of a nuclear explosion in its sheer force alone. The Dominion had spent centuries developing defenses against energy-based attacks, but against kinetic destruction, they had nothing. The battle became a massacre. Dominion ships, once symbols of fear and power, were now fleeing. But there was no escape. The Titan's fleet didn't need to get close to fight. Their railguns had range, and every shot landed with deadly accuracy. The Dominion fleet was crumbling before they could even understand how they were losing. What had started as a routine battle had turned into a nightmare beyond their worst fears. Somewhere in the chaos, a lone Dominion officer, barely surviving the wreckage of his destroyed warship, looked at the human fleet and felt something his kind had never felt before. Fear. The Dominion had always been the unstoppable force in the galaxy, but now, they had met an immovable object. Humanity had rewritten the rules of war, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The last of the Dominion ships retreated, limping away in disgrace. The Titan's captain stood on his own bridge, watching the battlefield with calm, calculating eyes. He knew this was just the beginning. The Dominion would come back. They would regroup, analyze, and try to find a way to counter this new threat. But it wouldn't matter. Humanity had already won the first fight, and the Dominion had learned something today that they would never forget. The age of energy warfare was over. The era of railguns had begun. The UHS Titan drifted through the wreckage of the defeated Dominion fleet, its dark hull gleaming under the distant glow of a dying star. The battle had ended, but the war was far from over. In the heart of the Dominion's high command, panic had spread like wildfire. Humanity's warships, once dismissed as insignificant, had annihilated an entire Dominion fleet without suffering a single loss. The shock of defeat had left the surviving Dominion officers speechless, their minds struggling to understand how their empire, the most powerful force in the galaxy, had been overwhelmed so easily. But they weren't ready to surrender, not yet. The Dominion had ruled for centuries by crushing rebellion, by outnumbering and overpowering their enemies. If humanity had defeated one fleet, the solution was simple. Send a bigger one. The Titan's crew monitored the remains of the battlefield. Their sensors picked up something massive approaching from hyperspace. Within moments, hundreds of Dominion warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel, their colossal forms blocking out the distant stars. This was not a single battle group, this was an armada, assembled in desperation, sent with one purpose, to erase humanity from existence. Every Dominion admiral, every war strategist, had agreed on one thing: the Titan had to be destroyed at all costs. The moment humanity had proven capable of challenging their rule, they had become the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. If the Dominion failed to crush them now, they would lose their hold on the stars forever. But Captain Elias Varian of the UHS Titan was not afraid. He had seen the fear in the Dominion's tactics, the hesitation in their movements. They weren't fighting as conquerors anymore. They were fighting as prey, trying to escape their inevitable fate. He gave the order. The Titan's railguns began charging, electromagnetic coils humming with power, preparing to unleash destruction. The Dominion fleet didn't waste time either. Hundreds of energy weapons flared to life, their plasma cannons glowing as they prepared to turn the Titan into dust. The battle that followed would be remembered for centuries to come. The Dominion ships fired first, unleashing a storm of plasma and ion bursts, filling the void with brilliant flashes of blue and red. The Titan's AI-controlled defense systems weaved through the chaos, moving with a speed no Dominion warship could match. Plasma bolts flew past harmlessly. Ion blasts grazed the armor but failed to land a decisive hit. Then the railguns fired, and the battle changed in an instant. The first shot punched through an enemy dreadnought, carving a hole straight through its command deck before it even had a chance to react. The second shot tore a battleship in half, sending its remains spinning out of control. The Titan didn't need to get close to fight. Its weapons had twice the range of any Dominion gun, and its targeting systems ensured that every shot found its mark. The Dominion fleet tried to advance, but each step forward cost them another warship. Every time they tried to surround the Titan, it moved like a predator, striking before they could react, then vanishing into the darkness of space. Minutes turned into an hour, and the Domination fleet was falling apart. The ships that had once ruled the galaxy, the mighty war machines that had conquered world after world, were dying faster than they could fight back. Some tried to flee, but the Titan's fleet, now joined by other human warships, hunted them down without mercy. But the Dominion was not ready to accept defeat. From the heart of their fleet, a colossal battleship, the Dreadnought-class Tyrannus, activated its main weapon, an antimatter cannon powerful enough to tear a planet in half. If they could not defeat the Titan with sheer numbers, they would erase it from existence with overwhelming firepower. The massive warship charged its weapon, its energy signature spiking as it prepared to fire. The Titan's sensors detected the buildup, and Captain Varian knew they had only seconds to act. Without hesitation, he gave the order. Every railgun on the Titan locked onto the Tyrannus, and for the first time in history, a human warship unleashed its full firepower in a single, concentrated strike. The first shot hit the Dominion dreadnought's outer armor, cracking its reinforced plating. The second shot tore through its lower decks, sending secondary explosions rippling across its hull. The third, fourth, and fifth shots slammed into its power core, and then the entire warship detonated. The shockwave of the explosion sent Dominion ships spinning out of control. Pieces of the dreadnought's burning wreckage crashed into nearby battleships, igniting chain reactions of destruction. The antimatter weapon never had the chance to fire. Instead of wiping out the Titan, the Dominion's greatest warship had been reduced to nothing in mere seconds. What remained of the Dominion fleet broke apart, their morale shattered beyond repair. Some ships tried to fight, but they were already dead men walking. Others surrendered, their captains realizing that facing the Titan meant certain doom. Humanity had not only survived the largest battle in its history, it had won decisively. As the last Dominion warship vanished into the darkness, retreating in disgrace, Captain Varian stood on the bridge of the Titan, watching as his crew celebrated their impossible victory. He knew this was just the beginning. The Dominion would return, they would rebuild, they would try to find a way to fight back. But it didn't matter. Humanity had changed space warfare forever. The old empires, the ancient rulers of the galaxy, now lived in fear of Earth's warships. Because the Titan had proven one undeniable truth: this was a warship that couldn't be stopped. The destruction of the Dominion's largest fleet had sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Never before had an empire so vast, so powerful, been humiliated in such a manner. The battle had not just been a defeat, it had been a slaughter. Humanity's warships, armed with unstoppable railguns, had torn through the Dominion's once invincible armada, as if it were made of paper and dust. Fear spread like wildfire among the surviving Dominion commanders. Planets that had once trembled under their rule began to rise in rebellion, sensing weakness for the first time in centuries. The Dominion was losing its grip on the galaxy, and if they did not act now, their empire would crumble into dust. Desperation forced them to change tactics. If brute strength had failed, then they would turn to deception, speed, and overwhelming strategy. The War Council gathered in a dimly lit chamber, their expressions grim, their voices hushed. The once mighty Dominion now feared a single human warship, the UHS Titan, and it was unacceptable. The Council's leader, High Warlord Zarkin, slammed his fist onto the table, his voice filled with rage and urgency. "We will not let these primitives destroy everything we have built. We will burn them down before they can strike again." The plan was set. A trick, a baited trap so perfect that not even humanity's warships could escape. The Dominion spread false intelligence rumors of a hidden superweapon, a last resort device capable of turning the tide of war. They made sure that humanity's spies intercepted the data, ensuring that Earth's high command would see the reports and react. As expected, the humans took the bait. The UHS Titan, along with a fleet of advanced warships, was dispatched to investigate. Humanity had been unstoppable in open battle, but what if they were lured into a battlefield designed to kill them? The Titan arrived in a system on the edge of Dominion space, where a massive space station loomed over a barren, lifeless planet. It was silent, dark, and motionless, a station that seemed abandoned, yet somehow too perfect to be real. The Titan's sensors scanned the structure, searching for any trace of the rumored superweapon. The fleet moved in cautiously, their railguns charged, their AI battle systems running thousands of calculations per second. But something felt wrong. Captain Elias Varian stood on the Titan's bridge, watching the stillness of the station, his instincts screaming a warning. It was too easy. And then, the trap was sprung. From the shadows of the station, Dominion stealth ships decloaked, their dark hulls gliding into attack positions. Hidden defense platforms, buried beneath the surface of the dead planet, came to life, launching barrages of plasma torpedoes into the void. A second fleet, twice the size of the last, dropped out of hyperspace behind the humans, cutting off their escape. The trap was perfect. The Titan and its fleet had been lured into a kill box, surrounded from all sides. Hundreds of Dominion warships, battle stations, and hidden artillery unleashed a storm of death, energy beams and torpedoes filling the void in every direction. The first human warship was torn apart instantly, its hull vaporized under the concentrated fire. Another took a direct hit to its reactor, detonating in a blinding explosion. The Dominion fleet closed in, hammering the Titan and its escorts with everything they had. The plan was simple: overwhelm them before they could fight back. They had learned from their past mistakes. Do not engage railgun-equipped ships in open space. Do not give them time to fire. Do not let them maneuver. But the Dominion had underestimated one crucial thing: humanity's ability to adapt. Captain Varian knew there was no escape, no easy way out. But he also knew one thing: the Dominion wanted them dead, not gone. And that gave him an opportunity. With a single command, the Titan's engines flared to life, accelerating toward the station at insane speeds. The Dominion commanders hesitated. Why weren't the humans retreating? Why were they charging toward the trap instead of away from it? But by the time they understood, it was too late. The Titan's railguns roared. The first shot pierced straight through the station, igniting hidden fuel reserves, and the entire structure erupted in a fireball so massive that even Dominion ships caught in the blast were ripped apart. The second shot obliterated a stealth cruiser, its cloaking systems unable to stop the raw kinetic devastation. The Titan did not slow down. It rammed straight through the wreckage, using the station's burning remains as cover, weaving through the debris field as its escort ships followed closely behind. The Dominion's carefully laid trap was now chaos, their own ships colliding in the confusion, their formation breaking apart. Humanity fought back with everything they had. The railguns, thought to be neutralized, found their targets, and one by one, Dominion ships began to fall. What had started as a perfect ambush had turned into a brawl, and in close-quarters combat, Dominion ships were slow and sluggish compared to the Titan's speed and precision. The hunters had become the hunted. The battle raged for hours, and by the time it was over, the Dominion fleet had been annihilated. The superweapon had never existed. The space station was nothing but wreckage. The trap had failed, and once again, the Titan had done the impossible. From the wreckage of a Dominion battleship, a wounded officer stared at the Titan in disbelief and horror. He had fought in dozens of wars, had seen entire civilizations crushed beneath Dominion rule, but nothing had ever terrified him like this. Nothing could stop them. No fleet, no ambush, no strategy had worked. Humanity's warships were rewriting the rules of war, and the Dominion was running out of time. As the Titan's engines flared, carrying it back toward human space, a message was transmitted across every surviving Dominion channel. A message that sent shockwaves through their entire empire. Your trap has failed. Your fleets are broken. You cannot stop us. Surrender or be destroyed. For the first time in history, the Dominion knew fear. The Dominion had ruled the galaxy for centuries. Their fleets had crushed rebellions before they could even begin. Their armies had reduced entire planets to ashes, and their enemies had always bowed before their might. No species had ever stood against them and survived until now. The war with humanity had started as a mere inconvenience, a minor conflict that the Dominion believed would end in days. But days turned to weeks, weeks turned to months, and now the war had become a nightmare from which they could not escape. The battle at the trap had been their last hope. Every strategy, every deception had been carefully planned, designed to end humanity's threat once and for all. And yet, they had failed. The UHS Titan, a single warship, had torn through their fleets, destroyed their stations, and turned their carefully laid ambush into a massacre. The surviving Dominion commanders had barely escaped, their fleets reduced to wreckage floating in the void. The truth could no longer be denied: humanity was winning. Panic spread through the highest levels of Dominion rule. The Great Council, once a symbol of supreme authority, had become a place of fear and confusion. Their voices, once filled with arrogance, now trembled with uncertainty. Reports flooded in outposts were being abandoned, military leaders were defecting, entire worlds were refusing orders. The very foundation of their empire was crumbling before their eyes. For the first time in history, the Dominion was not feared. It was hunted. And then came the final blow. The UHS Titan and an entire fleet of human warships arrived at Drazel Prime, the Dominion's capital world. It was the heart of their empire, a planet so heavily defended that no enemy had ever dared approach it. But humanity was not any enemy. Their warships cut through the defenses like a blade through flesh, railgun rounds shattering orbital platforms, pulse cannons annihilating defense fleets before they could even organize a counterattack. The sky above Drazel Prime burned with the wreckage of their own fallen fleet. The Great Council watched in horror as humanity's warships descended, their landing crafts piercing through the storm-filled atmosphere like avenging gods. Dominion soldiers fought desperately on the ground, but they were already defeated. Humanity's weapons were faster, deadlier, and smarter. For every human that fell, 10 Dominion soldiers died. Their war machines collapsed under the assault, their defenses were turned against them, and their capital city, once a symbol of power, became a graveyard. Inside the council chambers, High Warlord Zarkin stood motionless, his claws gripping the edge of the great stone table. How had it come to this? His species had ruled for generations. Their fleets had stretched across the stars, and now, he was surrounded by the sound of explosions and dying screams. A deep rage burned within him. He had sworn that humanity would be wiped from existence. And yet, they were the ones standing victorious. A deafening crash echoed through the chamber doors. Dominion guards raised their weapons, but before they could react, the great doors exploded inward, the force sending them flying. And there, standing in the smoke and rubble, was Captain Elias Varian. His armor was scarred from battle, his weapon still glowing from the energy of its last shot. Behind him, human soldiers poured in, their footsteps echoing like the drumbeats of an execution. Zarkin's claws clenched. He had two choices: surrender or die. But he already knew what the humans would demand. The Dominion had never given mercy, and they would receive none in return. With a final roar of defiance, he lunged, his blade aiming for Varian's throat. But before he could strike, a railgun round tore through his chest, sending him crashing onto the cold stone floor. Silence filled the chamber. The Great Council, once the rulers of a mighty empire, now stood as prisoners before their conquerors. The Dominion had fallen. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. The capital world was taken. The ruling council was dead or captured. The fleets had been obliterated. One by one, Dominion-controlled planets surrendered, their governors realizing there was no point in continuing a war they had already lost. The mighty empire, which had once enslaved entire civilizations, was now nothing more than a memory. And humanity? Humanity had done the impossible. They had not just fought against the strongest empire in the galaxy, they had destroyed it.as the UHS Titan left the burning remains of Drazel Prime behind. A message was transmitted across the stars. The war is over. The Dominion is no more. The age of their rule has ended. This galaxy is free. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy belonged not to conquerors, but to those who had fought for their right to exist. And at the heart of it all was a single warship. A warship that could not be stopped. The war was over. The Dominion, once the most feared empire in the galaxy, was nothing more than ashes and wreckage. Their fleets had been obliterated, their rulers captured or dead, and their once mighty capital reduced to silence. Across the stars, Dominion-controlled worlds surrendered without a fight, their people realizing that there was no future in resisting the unstoppable force that was humanity. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy was free from the iron grip of the Dominion's rule. But now, as the last battle ended and the smoke cleared, a new question arose, a question that echoed across every liberated world, across every battlefield left in ruins. What happens next? Aboard the UHS Titan, Captain Elias Varian stood on the bridge, gazing out at the stars. The war that had defined his existence for so long had finally ended, yet he felt no relief. Victory was only the beginning. Destroying the Dominion had been the easy part. What came next would decide the fate of millions of species, of entire civilizations that had known nothing but war and oppression. Without the Dominion's rule, the galaxy was a fractured place, a collection of planets that had no leaders, no direction, only chaos and uncertainty. Humanity had proven its strength, but strength alone would not be enough to build a future. The United Human Federation, the governing body of Earth and its colonies, now found itself in a position no one had expected. Humanity had not just won a war, they had become the dominant power in the galaxy. Every surviving species looked to them, some with hope, others with fear. Would humanity replace the Dominion? Would they become the new rulers, enforcing their will with the same iron fist? Or would they choose a different path, one that led to something greater? The first test came quickly. On the distant planet of Zarkon 5, one of the Dominion's former strongholds, a power struggle erupted. Without their masters, local warlords rose to claim power, each one seeking to establish their own rule over the world. The planet's inhabitants, once forced to serve under Dominion control, now found themselves trapped between new oppressors. The chaos threatened to spread to neighboring systems, where similar struggles were beginning to take shape. If left unchecked, the galaxy would tear itself apart before peace could even begin. Captain Varian received the orders from Earth: intervene but do not conquer. Humanity would not repeat the Dominion's mistakes. They would not rule through fear, nor through force alone. Instead, they would guide, support, and protect. The Titan and a fleet of human warships arrived at Zarkon 5, their presence immediately shifting the balance of power. The warlords, who had expected an easy path to domination, suddenly faced an enemy that had crushed an empire. Resistance was futile. Within days, the violence had ended, and the planet's people, once prisoners of war, now stood on the brink of something new: freedom. True freedom. For the first time in their existence, one by one, other worlds followed. Humanity sent envoys, engineers, and diplomats, not conquerors. Where Dominion rule had left planets in ruin, humans brought rebuilding efforts. Where chaos threatened to consume entire systems, human fleets provided security, not control. And where fear had once reigned, humanity brought something the galaxy had long forgotten: hope. But not everyone welcomed this new era. In the shadows, remnants of the Dominion still lurked: admirals who refused to surrender, soldiers who would rather die than accept defeat. These remnants launched attacks on supply lines, targeted colonies, and sought to ignite rebellion in Dominion-loyal systems. They spread whispers of human tyranny, warning that Earth was merely another empire waiting to take full control. The war was not truly over, not yet. Captain Varian knew that peace would not come easily. He led mission after mission, hunting down the Dominion's last strongholds, dismantling their networks, and ensuring that their time of terror was truly at an end. With every battle, the galaxy inched closer to true stability. The former Dominion species, once enemies of humanity, began to see them not as conquerors, but as protectors. Where the Dominion had ruled with fear, humanity led with strength and purpose. Years passed. The scars of war remained, but slowly they began to heal. A galactic council was formed, an alliance of newly freed worlds, each given a voice, each given a place in shaping the future. Humanity did not claim dominion over them. Instead, they stood among them, not above them. It was not an empire. It was a union, a promise that no species would ever suffer under tyranny again. As the Titan moved through the vastness of space, Captain Varian watched as new civilizations rose from the ashes of war. The battles had been won, but the true victory was in what came after. The dawn of a new era had begun. And for the first time in the history of the galaxy, it was not ruled by fear, but by unity, by strength, and by the unwavering will of those who refused to bow to oppression. Humanity had not just changed the course of war. They had changed the course of history itself.